The recent Warframe update introduced 3 new Galvanized mods, and the thing is, these make melees so broken strong that it completely changes the way that we build them. So, in today's Warframe guide, I'm gonna tell you everything you need to know about these 3, as well as how to incorporate them in your personal melee builds to get that damage boost. Big shoutouts to Warframe's Quest to Conquer Cancer, donate for the good cause via the link in the description, and now, let's jump right into it. Alright, but before we get ahead of ourselves, how about we first take a look at those 3 mods and see what they actually do. Number 1 is called Galvanized Steel, and it is basically the galvanized version of the mod True Steel, which gives crit chance to melee weapons. The base stat of crit chance is slightly lower as for True Steel, but therefore it has another nice second stat, and that is you get plus 30% crit damage for 20 seconds whenever you take out an enemy with a melee, and that stacks up to 4 times, meaning up to plus 120% crit damage. This is all in all really great because it is a mod that gives us crit chance and damage at the same time. Number 2 is Galvanized Elementalist, the galvanized version of the also relatively new mod Melee Elementalist that gives us more status damage, and in the galvanized version, on melee kill we get plus 30% status chance for 20 seconds, also stacking up to 4 times. Now, about the Elementalist mods in general, I have already talked about it in the past, but just to make it short, status damage means the damage that you deal with those status effects that cause damage over time, like toxin, like electricity, slash, heat. This damage over time from the status effect will deal more damage if you use an Elementalist mod. Given how broken strong damage over time is in general in Warframe, it should be an absolute no-brainer that galvanized mods in general are super great, and also Galvanized Elementalist giving us additional status chance on top is a very strong addition. And finally, we have a bit of an odd one in the form of Galvanized Reflex, and no, it's not just you, also I had to look up what the actual normal version of this mod was. Turns out it is Reflex Coil, a mod that gives us heavy attack efficiency. It's a pretty off-meta stat that we don't regularly see, and what it basically means is, instead of losing your entire combo counter whenever you perform a heavy attack, this 50% heavy attack efficiency means you only lose half of your current combo counter on a heavy attack. It's nothing that you would usually use a mod slot for. However, Galvanized Reflex second stat is what makes it, in my opinion, the most broken one of these 3 new mods, and that is you gain plus 20 initial combo, also stacking up to 4 times, meaning out of this you can get a plus 80 initial combo, and given that it is on melee kill, this is pretty much going to be up all the time. Oh yeah, and by the way, in case you're wondering where you can actually get those 3 new Galvanized mods from, it's pretty simple. Just like all the other Galvanized mods in the game, you just go to a random relay, walk over to the room of the Arbiters of Hexes, and then you talk to this guy right here. He sells all the Galvanized mods, and you will also find the 3 new one in his offers. But alright, so much about what the new Galvanized mods do. Let's now take a closer look at them one by one and go over how you're going to fit them into your builds, what you're going to replace in order to swap them in, and in general, the ridiculous amounts of power that these new mods will give you. And in case you could give the video a little like, that would be super nice because it helps me big time with the YouTube algorithm, so cheers so much for your support. Okay, how about we start out with Galvanized Steel, which seems to be the most straightforward one of the 3. In the past, we had 3 main mods to give crit chance to our melee weapons, those being True Steel, Sacrificial Steel, which is a much stronger version of True Steel, and then Whipping Wounds, which doesn't give you constant crit chance, but therefore crit chance that stacks up with your combo multiplier, meaning that was usually our choice for light attack combo builds, and it will result in crazy crit chance buffs. Now, the question would be, how does Galvanized Steel stack up to the pre-established 3 here? It's actually a bit different than you might think. Now, first of all, True Steel is pretty dead. I mean, to be honest, even in the past, it was a relatively niche mod, and as far as I know, only used in melee duplicate builds, because, you know, melee duplicate makes melee attacks hit twice, but only if you score a yellow crit. That would be the scenario where you want to go for True Steel to not overcap on crit chance. And with Galvanized Steel now in the mix, in specifically those situations, you would of course go for Galvanized Steel over True Steel because you don't want to miss out on that plus 120% additional crit damage. However, on most heavy attack builds, where you want to go for as much crit chance as possible, in the past you've used Sacrificial Steel just because of that much higher crit chance, and also now I don't really see a place for Galvanized Steel here. The double crit chance that Sacrificial Steel gives you is just too good to miss out. But, and this is very interesting, Galvanized Steel now actually has a place in light attack combo builds. Let me explain. In the past, for light attack combo builds, of course, you would use Weeping Wounds because with a 12 times combo multiplier, that would be a lot of crit chance. And guess what? We're not going to replace that. Galvanized Steel is not going to be our crit chance mod on the light attack builds. Instead, we're going to use this as a crit damage mod. See, the common crit damage mods that we currently have are Organ Shatter with plus 90% and Gladiator Might with another plus 60. And on your standard light attack builds, you either use one or even both of them. However, with Galvanized Steel now in the mix, and as we've already seen, a potential to give you plus 120% crit damage, that makes Galvanized Steel actually a stronger crit damage mod than both of the previous ones, and of course it gives you the plus 110% crit chance on top. So, long story short, if you have a light attack build, then you're gonna replace one of your crit damage mods with Galvanized Steel to get even more crit damage and more crit chance as a bonus on top. The only scenario where Galvanized Steel, in my opinion, is not an option is a heavy attack build that uses Sacrificial Steel and therefore cannot fit Galvanized Steel as well. Other than that though, I think it's a definite must and a big spike in damage. Up next, let's talk about Galvanized Elementalist, which is a bit more straightforward in my opinion than Galvanized Steel. To make it very short, in my opinion, there's barely any scenario out there where you would actually want to use the normal Melee Elementalist over the Galvanized version. I mean, yeah, sure, you have a little bit less status damage, but the plus 120% status chance, that is more than going to make up for this. The only scenario I could imagine is one where you go for a heavy attack build and you don't have any other source of heavy attack wind-up speed on the build, and therefore you would have to go for Melee Elementalist because of the plus 60% heavy attack wind-up speed in order to not be too slow with your heavy attacks. Usually though, on a heavy attack build, you have Killing Blow that also gives you heavy attack wind-up speed, you have Amalgam Organ Shatter, so the wind-up speed for Melee Elementalist is not all that necessary and you can safely replace it. I just wanted to mention it in case you have a very special heavy attack build. In that case, I would probably pass on Galvanized Elementalist. However, this one has another use other than replacing its normal counterpart, and that would be replacing Melee Prowess. You know, Melee Prowess, this one niche mod that gives you more status chance on a melee. Well, with the Galvanized Elementalist's plus 120% melee status chance, this can safely replace Melee Prowess and will give you status damage on top. I mean, to be fair, Melee Prowess is not really a mainstream mod, but I keep encountering builds here and there that do use it, and for those builds, I think Galvanized Elementalist is the better option. So yeah, also here, long story short, Galvanized Elementalist, use it to replace both Melee Prowess and the normal Melee Elementalist, except you have a heavy attack build where the only source of heavy attack wind-up speed is Melee Elementalist. In that case, don't. In every other case, go for Galvanized Elementalist. And last, but definitely not least, let's talk about Galvanized Reflex. Now, the first thing I want to mention here is Reflex Coil. I personally have never ever used this on any melee weapon, and I'm pretty sure most of you also are in the same situation, especially with the introduction of Tennokai that allows us to do free heavy attacks without losing any combo. I think the heavy attack efficiency stat in general has become pretty much obsolete. Well, to be fair, the crazy part about Galvanized Reflex is surely not the heavy attack efficiency. Instead, Galvanized Reflex is purely used for its secondary stat, which is the plus 20 initial combo counter for 20 seconds, stacking up to 4 times, aka plus 80 initial combo or 5 times combo multiplier. Yeah, I think this is pretty self-explanatory, but just in case you're not that familiar with melee modding just yet, let me give you a little bit of background info here. Mods and arcanes that increase your initial combo counter are incredibly important for heavy attack builds. Reason is that when you perform a heavy attack, your standard heavy attack damage is going to be multiplied by your current combo multiplier. AKA, if you have a maxed out combo multiplier, you could deal up to 12 times as much damage with a heavy attack than you would deal normally. Naturally, that is very strong, and for heavy attack builds, we want to make sure to have as much initial combo as possible so that we can benefit from this damage multiplier with every single hit. That is, by the way, why in the past we've always used mods like Corrupt Charge, which would give us enough initial combo counter to get a 2x multiplier, aka dealing double the damage, or even arcanes like Melee Crescendo that could theoretically give you up to a 12x initial combo multiplier when you max it out completely. Now though, with Galvanized Reflex, things look a bit different. First off, Corrupt Charge, the mod that we previously used to get a 2x multiplier, that one is completely dead. Like, seriously, every build that you have right now, if you have Corrupt Charge on it, just throw Galvanized Reflex on instead. It is so much better. You're gonna sit at a constant 5x instead of your constant 2x. As for Melee Crescendo, well, with the release of Galvanized Reflex, the value of it has tanked quite significantly, and of course, I totally see why. See, with Melee Crescendo, of course, you could theoretically have a constant 12x combo multiplier, but the thing is that after performing a heavy attack, it takes a bit of time for your initial combo to tick back up to where it stands. Yes, this right here is not just a visual effect. When you perform a heavy attack, you really only get that multiplier that you currently see on screen the moment you press the button. In practical gameplay, where you spam heavy attacks like crazy, Melee Crescendo realistically will never be able to count past a 6x multiplier before you go down to 0 again with your next heavy attack. So, in other words, going for Galvanized Reflex instead of Melee Crescendo isn't even a loss. Long story short, Galvanized Reflex, use it to replace Corrupt Charge in all of your builds. There's literally not a single advantage to having Corrupt Charge over Galvanized Reflex. And this is a suggestion that I haven't seen that much yet, use the Aura mod Ready Steel on your Warframe, which gives you another little bit of initial combo, which, if combined with Galvanized Reflex, will give you a constant 6x combo multiplier, and because of the additional 50% heavy attack efficiency, that means that even if you spam the heavy attack button, you're pretty much guaranteed to have a 6x multiplier for every single heavy attack that you deal, meaning it's gonna be incredibly strong. As for Melee Crescendo, well, to be honest, it is not going to be as meta anymore as it was before, but it still has a little bit of a niche for those type of builds that use melee combo multiplier for other things, like for example that one arcane for pistols that gives you more crit chance based on your melee combo multiplier. Yeah, in those scenarios, Melee Crescendo is still king, but in the heavy attack meta, I don't really see it anymore. And in case you need some suggestions as to which melees to put these new mods on, then up next, check out my top melee weapon list right here. Another big shout out to Quest to Conquer Cancer, link in the description. We see each other, hopefully in the next one, and until then, as always, good loot.